Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us. For those of you that don't know me, my name is John Fawcett. I've worked for Lou for the last 5 years in various capacities at Fox News and most recently as executive producer on this show. I want to start out today's show by thanking the tens of millions of you that have tuned into this podcast for the last almost 3 years. From the bottom of my heart and from Lou's up in heaven smiling down, we truly appreciate it. When we started this podcast, neither Lou, myself, or our team really knew what to expect. Lou had just departed Fox Business after spending the last nearly 50 years in television as an anchor, and with the legacy media dying out due to people's lack of trust, we knew Lou needed to have a voice in the fight. A voice in the fight for this great country and not to be held back and censored. And so the Great America Show was started. Lou could have very easily went off into the sunset and enjoyed retirement, as he so much deserved. But not working was not in Lou's blood or his DNA. Lou's vision for this show was simple. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Always be honest and respect the audience. And follow the simple principles: truth, justice, and the American way. When Lou passed on, I wasn't sure I wanted to stay in this business. The idea of not working with Lou every day was something I'd never thought about or thought I'd ever want to do. It's not an easy business to be in, especially if you were a Republican. The Marxist Democrats in this country have turned the whole media upside down to spin a narrative that they want pushed. And if you dare go against the masters, you are public enemy number one. So when I say it's not easy, trust me, it's not for everyone. After taking a month off to figure out my next steps, I spent days on end asking myself, what would Lou want me to do? And I spent days reminiscing about the great work we accomplished together. And I spent days thinking about all the work we still have left to do. And so I came to the conclusion that it would be selfish for me not to finish the mission Lou and I had started together. It will be tough for me knowing that I can't pick up the phone any hour of the day to call Lou and pick his brain on something, and I did so very often. It will also be tough for me to fill the shoes he leaves behind because they can never be filled. But I can assure you that I will do my best, and I will work with the same honor and integrity that Lou taught me. I will hold myself to the same standard Lou held me to each and every day and nothing less. Anybody that had the honor and pleasure of knowing or working with Lou knows that the Dobbs standard is something that's almost unrealistic, but that tells you what kind of person Lou was. I want to conclude with this before we get into our first show. Lou was a brother to me, a best friend, and a mentor. He was someone who gave me everything, and now it's my time to give back to him. Lou now passes on the torch to me as his work here is complete. And every day that I wake up and sit down in my studio to get to work, I will look at the picture of Lou and I that sits on my desk and let him know, this is for you, brother. With that, I want to get into today's show. The political climate of late has been, well, we'll call it weird. The DNC just wrapped up, and it was one for the books. Historic, in fact. We watched Kamala Harris become the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. This is a person who has never received one vote from the American people, yet somehow she has not only stolen the show, but she's stolen the nomination. How did we even get here? How is this democracy? Well, it's not. This is business as usual for the Democrats. You may recall what they did in 2016 to Bernie Sanders when they stole the primary from him. And they did it again in 2020 when they ensured Joe Biden was the candidate to go up against President Trump. It may have taken almost 9 years, but it seems some Democrats and the American people have finally had enough. One of them being Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the latest victim of the backroom deals for the Democrats. RFK said enough was enough and decided to make history, endorsing President Trump and vowing to fight with Trump for a victory in November. Our guest today is Roger Stone. He's a political strategist and longtime advisor to President Trump. He's also the host of the Stone Zone. And joining us now is the great Roger Stone. Roger, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. News of the week, RFK uniting behind President Donald J. Trump. We have Republicans in our party, the rhinos, who can't even unite behind this man, yet we have an independent, we'll call him a Democrat because that's what he is, uniting behind President Trump. What do you have to say?
Well, first of all, I give huge credit to Robert Kennedy Jr., who put party aside, put his own personal ambitions aside, and realized that the Harris Walz campaign and potential administration would be the ruin of this country. He understands this is about war. It's about censorship. It's about free speech. It's about the poisoning of our food. And I think this was a very selfless act. I think it gives President Trump a big boost. I would argue that it negates any bump that Harris might have gotten out of that relatively pitiful Democrat National Convention, which was all attacks on Donald Trump, but no positive proposals to help America. When they do talk to you about what Kamala Harris is really for, she rarely speaks herself. It's wage and price controls. It's loans to people who could never service a mortgage to buy a home. Last time we tried that was under Secretary of HUD Andrew Cuomo in the Clinton administration, and it brought the entire economy down. So her politics, her policies, they try to hide. And then, as you know, John, they act like she hasn't been vice president for the last 3 years. There are all these problems in America, folks. Our border, the prices in the grocery stores. I'm going to fix all that. Well, why doesn't she fix it right now?
Right.
So I think this is a political realignment. You're right. The fake Republicans, the globalist country club Bush Republicans, if they want to side with Kamala Harris and Walz, they can do so. But this is a realignment. What you're going to get now are working class Democrats and independents, the old style. I mean, back from the days when the Democrat Party believed in capitalism,
Right.
believed in free enterprise, believed in a strong national defense, believed in anti-communism. I mean, Bobby Kennedy's father and his uncle were both ardent, hardcore anti-communists,
Right.
And they would be shocked by the communist influence in today's Democrat Party.
You know, the reason I asked you to come on is because I don't think there's anybody who knows more about JFK and the whole situation behind JFK, aside from maybe his family and those who have seen the 1% that hasn't been declassified about the CIA. And you wrote a book on it, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ. And you can get that on your site, right? StoneZone.com. It's truly remarkable. But, you know, I see some pollsters out on Twitter saying it may not move the needle. And one, for example, is a pollster from Rasmussen. And he tweeted out and he said, you know, it may not move the needle. Maybe 15 minutes after RFK made that announcement, he says, I think I'm going to regret that. And I'm just going to give you one poll that I find very interesting. The deep blue, or what was the deep blue state of Virginia, now looks to be in play. A new poll out from Roanoke Polling in a three-way race with RFK has Harris at 45, Trump at 42, RFK at 6%, with 3% between Trump and Harris. Now you couple that with something Glenn Youngkin did over the last few weeks, and that was an Executive Order 30, which said the 2024 election must be on paper ballots. I don't know why everyone in the nation's not doing that, but do you think now states like Virginia, New York, and New Jersey will be in play?
Well, it's very important to understand polling because not all polls are the same. And polling can be manipulated. That's what we've seen recently. So in many cases, some of these mainstream pollsters would oversample Democrats, too many Democrats in the sample, to create this false impression that Kamala Harris was somehow surging, that support for her was exploding. But if you look at the more respectable polls where the methodology is solid, where they're not cooking the poll by cooking the sample or by the way they word the questions or the order the questions are asked, I think you're going to see that Trump will get a nice increase in his vote. Now, I think there's a process. In other words, Kennedy voters, I think, are going to take a minute before they decide where to go. But increasingly, at the grassroots level, talking to some of his supporters that I know, there's been a sea change in their attitude after the attempted assassination. I think people then began to realize that our biggest single problem is the deep state. The biggest single problem is the criminalization of our critical our justice system. The open, unanswered questions about this assassination, I think, brought people a lot of focus. So I think that the polls are going to show a modest increase. But now that if you have Robert Kennedy out campaigning for Trump, if you have Tulsi Gabbard, who's joined the Trump entourage, out campaigning for Trump, if you have Nicole Shanahan, who was Robert Kennedy's running mate, who I think has been red-pilled through this whole process. I mean, I think in the beginning she was She was more of a liberal Democrat. But then when she saw the brutal way that the Democrats tried to keep RFK off the ballot every place, very similar to what they tried to do with Donald Trump,
Yep.
I think she deserves a lot of credit here, because I think both she and Robert Kennedy put their personal interests aside for the good of the country. But all of those surrogates, if you will, I think this becomes very, very powerful.
You know, the interesting thing, you mentioned Shanahan, which, you know, like you said, I think coming into this, she was, you know, very, very far left, and seeing what the Justice Department and the deep state can do, and it's the deep state on the left now. You know, we're so used to it coming from the right and attacking Republicans, but this was the deep state from the left suing RFK in almost every state to get him off the ballot. You know, I do think that RFK and her are principled, and you'll hear from the left that they're not, and they sold out, and that they're for sale. And I'll tell you one point. Apparently, right before the endorsement came, Shanahan did an interview, and she was very upset with the vaccines and Operation Warp Speed. And, you know, we all understand now, you know, that the vaccines didn't work. You know, they were forced upon us in blue states like here in New York. Where you are in Florida, you guys were lucky enough to have Ron DeSantis. But that was one thing that they took issue with. And they wanted President Trump to come out and say Warp Speed wasn't as successful as he says it was, and that we now know a lot more than we knew before. So I think, you know, something like that shows that you have some sort of principle and that you believe in something, and it just wasn't all for nothing.
Well, and look, here's the most important point, which is that President Trump has always opposed a vaccination mandate. He does not think anyone who doesn't want to take the vaccination should be forced or required to have the vaccination to keep their job or to go out in public. As you read the other day, he thinks that those members of the military who were fired because of their refusal to take the vaccination should get their back pay back, and if they want, their jobs back. I think that's simple justice. So I think it's a step in the right direction. This is going to be a fight where the issues are broader than health freedom. Health freedom is a hugely important issue, and RFK's right. They're poisoning us through our food. You know, for years, I must tell you, I always thought there was only one mayonnaise, Hellman's mayonnaise, the real mayonnaise. That's their slogan. Right. I would go to a barbecue, somebody would buy Kraft mayonnaise. I would bust their chops and say, "What's wrong with you?" But then, John, I took a look at the ingredients, and I found out there's all kinds of HMOs and all kinds of, GMOs and all kinds of other chemicals and additives in there that are not natural. Right. And then if you look a little broader, it's happening across the board in all of our food. This is a huge issue. This and the lack of affordable housing, which is another issue that I think RFK played a crucial role in terms of getting it into this campaign. You can't buy a house because you can't afford to buy a house. Right. And you can't find rental properties. And when you can find them, you find in many cases they're being used to provide free housing to people who are here illegally. So I think that he's raised a number of really crucial issues in the election. This is, I must tell you, I've been in 13 national presidential campaigns, but this development could never have been foreseen. And I think it completely changes the race. So to the extent that the Democrats were going to get any bump out of the show in Chicago, where they pretended to be something they're not, where they identified a few of our problems, but tried to pretend like they weren't the fault of the current administration. Right. I just don't. I think this is a bridge too far. The American people are not that stupid. They know what they're paying for gas today. They know what they were paying under Donald Trump. They know how much they can get at the grocery store for their dollar. They knew how much more it bought under Donald Trump. And now the administration is forced to admit that their job creation numbers, the 1,818,000 jobs they claimed had been created by Joe Biden, that was all BS as well. They were forced to revise their numbers. And then Kamala Harris's chief economic advisor, when told that these numbers come from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, she says she's not familiar with who they are. Unbelievable. Right.
You know, it's interesting. It's sort of like these Democrats who are still fooled by the BS that Kamala and I guess you can say Biden, I don't know if you can say him anymore, but are pushing. The people are still fooled by it. It's almost like they have Stockholm syndrome. You brought up the food thing, and that goes to the vaccine thing as well. I was looking at a spray olive oil the other day in my cabinet, and it said there was silicone in it. Now, why the hell would you need silicone in a spray olive oil? Both of my grandparents lived on my mother's side and my father's side, lived to over 100. And, this is back in the day when they were born in 1918. They went through the Great Depression, and they lived to over 100. I mean, you see cancer rates now and diabetes rates now off the charts. And it's truly, people don't realize what the hell is going on. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to go further into that polling. When can we expect the polling to start changing in Donald Trump's favor? Is the honeymoon period over for Kamala Harris? We're going to get Roger's take on that when we return. Stay with us. We're coming right back. We're back. We're talking with the great Roger Stone. And Roger, right before we went to break, I wanted to go further into polling. Just looking over some Real Clear Politics averages, just for a starting point. They've got Harris plus 1.5. Now I want to go down to top battleground states where Trump is leading in all but two, and that's Michigan, Wisconsin. He's leading, according to their averages, in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Georgia. So I said we have a 1.5 point, a point and a half advantage for Kamala Harris in the Real Clear Politics average. But then you go down to the battleground states, and you have Trump leading by 0.1. With no toss-up states, according to their predictions, Trump wins 287 to 251. So where are they coming up with this? The numbers just don't seem to make sense because the swing states is what carries you over the finish line if you're President Trump or Kamala Harris. Where's the discrepancy there?
Well, first of all, timing is very important. So people need to recognize that a poll is a snapshot in time. In other words, it's only valid for that episecond after it's been tabulated. But with our situation as volatile as it is, things change very quickly. So Kamala Harris got a free ride. She got the big media buildup in which we tried to pretend that she was, some tough, capable, tough on crime prosecutor, an absurdity, all of this. And then you're doing the right thing, though, by looking at the Real Clear average. In other words, don't look at any one poll. Look at multiple polls in the same time period and see if you can find a trend. I still think it's going to take a little bit of time because you can never poll in the eye of a storm. You can't poll, during the time when this is all in the media. You have to let people digest it a little while. That includes the impact of the Democrat convention, as well as the impact now of the Robert Kennedy endorsement. So I would say by the middle of next week, you'll get a much better feeling for where things are. That said, this was always going to be a close, hard-fought, very tight race, even against Joe Biden. That's because of the fake news media ability to manipulate people, also because of the online manipulation by Google and Facebook and Instagram and so on. So I take nothing for granted. This is still going to be a very tough, hard-fought election, but I do think that Trump is now today, my guess is he has a modest lead, and I think he can hold the lead. And I think by using people like Tulsi Gabbard, like Robert Kennedy, like Nicole Shanahan, as well as many others. Plus, I still believe, and I'm absolutely certain I'm right about this, J.D. Vance is going to turn out in the end to be the right guy. His moment is going to come. I understand the left likes to dump on him. It's elitism, really. It's snobbery. They don't like him because he came from nothing. Right. Because he came from hard scrabble background. He earned everything he has. He's been incredibly successful in business. He was a successful author, a successful documentary maker, a filmmaker, but he also served his country in the U.S. Marine Corps. He's fearless. He's 100% America first. He's going to turn out to be the right guy as well. So when you add that all up, I'm still confident that the president will win a narrow but unassailable victory when it's all over.
You mentioned J.D. Vance, and before I forget, I wasn't a J.D. Vance guy in the beginning. I thought there were other people who suited President Trump better just based off of the track record that J.D. Vance was sort of a never-Trumper in the beginning. Now that we're essentially stuck with him, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I've actually grown to like the man. But anyone listening to this who hasn't watched on Netflix Hillbilly Elegy, I really highly recommend it to you. The life that J.D. Vance went through, it was truly the troubles he had with his mother, drug addiction. It almost ruined his life. And it was truly sad and humbling to see that someone who came from absolutely nothing could do so much with his life. And I mean, he really is the American dream. And to see these Democrats at the DNC, that it's a bad thing that he went to, and Tim Walz or whoever the hell it was, he left Nebraska, he left Ohio to go to an Ivy League school. Well, what the hell do you want him to do? Was he supposed to not go to law school? Was he supposed to go to a state school? I mean, what more do you want when you had 6 or 7 people on that Democrat stage who also went to Yale? I mean, the hypocrisy. But, the question I have for you is, are these Democrat voters dumb enough to buy this stuff? Here's an example. Kamala Harris's deputy campaign manager on MSNBC the other day telling the audience Kamala will do interviews on her own time whenever she feels like it. You're not entitled to anything. Who the hell does she think she is?
That's a losing strategy. I think the American people want to feel like they know the president. They certainly know Donald Trump because he's so incredibly accessible. He talks, he does interviews, he does press conferences, he answers questions. Right. They would like to play hide the ball here. In other words, they know Kamala Harris can't answer a question, that she has no substance, she has no program, and she's not good on her feet. They've demonstrated that. Right. So they're now trying to hide her. They've theoretically agreed to 2 debates, but I'll believe it when she shows up. And the idea that Donald Trump would be afraid to debate Kamala Harris is laughable. He went into the CNN debate where the rules were completely rigged against him. He stuck to the rules, and I think he came out ahead. I thought he had an excellent debate. He stayed focused. He didn't take the bait on those few times during the debate where Joe Biden was temporarily lucid. He tried to bait the president who ignored him and kept pounding on him over the economy, on the open borders, on the potential of World War III. So I think they ultimately realized that their biggest single problem is their candidate can't speak. They don't want a debate. They'll do anything they can to dodge a debate. Why won't they do the Fox debate? Right. Trump did the CNN debate. Why is she afraid to do the Fox debate?
Yeah, the notion that Trump is scared of anything. I mean, Trump is literally the epitome of a man voluntarily going to the lion's den. I mean, he puts himself in these situations, and God bless the man because he's not scared of anything. He knew when he announced he was running for re-election for 2024 that these indictments were going to come against him, that there was jail time that could be had if he was found guilty. And now he's waiting trial in September in New York, where he can have jail time. He's got the case in Georgia, which is a state case which he can't be pardoned in. He knew these repercussions. To think that he was somehow scared to go into a debate. Kamala Harris has not introduced, I mean, anyone who watched the DNC, it was terrible, and I apologize that you wasted your time, myself included, but there was nothing policy. Everything was Trump, 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 Trump's the bad. Even you have Joe Biden going out there probably his last time on a big stage, repeating the same Charlottesville hoax that Trump is a racist. He's all for KKK. And I mean, it was truly unbelievable. Kamala's only policy that she has told us about is no tax on tips. What do you think about that?
Yeah, whose idea was that? I mean, this is very interesting. In Nevada, the culinary union has always been a major piece of Senator Harry Reid, the late minority leader, later majority leader. That's always been part of the Democrat machine. But right. Trump, I think, is going around the bosses, the union bosses, directly to the speaking to the individual service employees, and this has been very popular. So what does Kamala Harris do? She basically lifts the whole thing like she just thought of it yesterday. People are not that stupid, I don't think.
You've got, like we said earlier on the show, you had Robert F. Kennedy coming over from the Democrat side, uniting with the party. Just last week, we have now Brian Kemp, who was one of President Trump's staunchest enemies during the 2020 election. I mean, going as far as not investigating ballot fraud. You had the whole phone call, which led to an impeachment. I mean, the avalanche rolled on and on. Now, Kemp says he wants to unite with Trump because we've had enough of Kamala Harris. Is it genuine? Why now?
I don't know the background here, but I am encouraged. Perhaps the governor's mind changed when he saw this attempted assassination against Donald Trump. All I'm happy about is that he's agreed to get on board. Georgia is a crucial election. There are still outstanding lawsuits over the integrity of that election, both state and federal law. There's an enormous amount of evidence that has now been documented in those lawsuits, proving that there was actual fraud. But let's be clear. Nixon did not get elected in 1968 because he whined about being stolen in the 1960 election.
Right.
We need to focus on the next election. And I'd much rather have the governor of Georgia with us than against us.
Well, I agree. We have to focus on the next election, but we also have to look at the mistakes that were made in the last election and ensure. And I think, we're seeing that across the board, and mail-in ballots being one of perhaps the biggest ways the Democrats could use or have used to steal an election. And I think some of these states now have finally started to realize, and like I said earlier, Virginia being one. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, says he's looking at cutting interest rates. What a coincidence, just in time for the November election. We're going to take that up with Roger when we return. Stay with us. We're coming right back. We're back. We're talking with political strategist, the great Roger Stone. Roger, Jerome Powell, who hasn't touched interest rates in a while now, says he's looking at cutting rates because inflation has been, taken care of. What do you think about that? Just in time for the election, what is he doing?
He's trying to manipulate the economy to give Kamala Harris a chance. By the way, other presidents have tried to do this to get the Fed to either ease up or to tighten up, depending on the situation. This is just another example of them using the government for political purposes, and that's, I think, what they want. Does anyone out there really think that the high cost of, say, groceries is because of the greedy grocery companies and food processing and food companies? No, the reason that prices are so high is because their costs are so high.
Right.
It's the idea of wage and price controls, which Richard Nixon tried. That was Governor John Connally, later Treasury Secretary John Connally, talked President Nixon into not only taking us off the gold standard, but also wage and price controls. Probably Nixon's two greatest mistakes. They won't work. It's an obvious political ploy. Economists that I respect tell me the economy is still going to get substantially worse under the current Biden-Harris administration. See, they want to pretend that Joe Biden, who's he? Why? Who's Joe Biden? I mean, the idea that a sitting president would not be present when they nominated Kamala Harris and the torch was passed is beyond belief. Now, what we don't know is whether Joe left in a pique himself, spoke and then left, or he spoke after they pushed him out of prime time and he left because they wanted him gone. But they would just like to pretend that his administration never existed and that Kamala Harris has a solution to all the problems in the country without mentioning that all these problems have existed for 3.5+ years and she's done nothing whatsoever about them.
Right. You mentioned food costs and inflation and the price of gas and everything that we consume on a daily basis as Americans. But one thing we didn't talk about was the stock market and how that frames everything around the world. We saw what happened in Japan a few weeks ago when their market crashed and what it did to our markets. A lot of people don't realize because they're so set on this being Trump versus Biden, and they don't realize that this market is teeter-totter. I mean, it can go either way at any point. And the drop of a pin, I think, could tilt it in one direction or the other, and most likely going in the wrong direction. A lot of people don't realize that we're one step away from a depression, a recession. We saw how fast it happened during COVID. I mean, it was over the course of 2 weeks. We went from a booming economy, job markets and stock market to 2 weeks later, people losing their jobs and losing their houses.
Yeah, it's really quite extraordinary. If you stop and think about it, you're just in a situation in which they're kind of making it up as they go along. This we know, which is the economic prescription that she has put together, the little policy stuff she has previewed is certain to destroy the economy. I remember when they said, if Trump is elected, the stock market will crash and we'll have a depression.
Right.
Instead, we had the most robust economy in our history. the greatest rate of job growth, the greatest rate of wage growth, the lowest levels of unemployment among all Americans, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, young, old, rural, or urban. They also told us if we elected Donald Trump, we'd have World War III. Right. Well, who is it that's this close to World War III? Well, I would say it's this administration that risks World War III. So to the Democrats, black is white and white is black. In other words, if they continue at the rate they're going, they have to try to completely erase Biden's presidency and pretend that all of these problems that the country has today, well, they're all Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump hasn't been president for 3+ years. I just don't think the American people are that stupid.
The thing that, and I hope you're right, and I think we all pray that you're right, but the thing that just doesn't make sense to me is President Trump has a proven track record. In 2016, he was a little bit more robust than he has been now. He's toned down the rhetoric a lot, which, I'm not really a fan of. I like the funny Donald Trump, but he's turned it down, especially here in this election. He's tried to keep it mostly on policy. Why are there still those people who are just the Oprah Winfreys of the world? Why are they so set against Trump? What is it in their head? RFK, his wife's an actress, Cheryl Hines, on one of the greatest television shows in the history of television, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David, a huge anti-Trump guy. This man was able, and anyone who's married, I'm not married, but anyone who's married knows how hard it is, I think, to get anything past your wife. He was able to endorse President Trump, his wife, who's still working in Hollywood, and Trump's probably hated by about 95% of Hollywood, just to throw a number out there. Why are people just so blinded by the fact of these Democrats being the Lord and Savior?
Look, I think it is elitism. So look at their convention. Michelle Obama talks about, the evil of people who want too much. My family, my parents always were concerned about those who wanted more than their share. She's worth $100 million. Plus. Or Oprah. Oprah is mega wealthy. All these people are elitists, but
$3 billion.
Yeah. So Bernie Sanders, my all-time favorite. Bernie Sanders skimmed millions of dollars in media commissions from his 2 presidential campaigns. He's driving a top-of-the-line Mercedes. He's got 3 homes. Yet, but he insists that socialism is good for you. It's just not good for the rest of us.
And then when the Republicans call it out for what it is, we're bad. We're bad people. We're starting wars. We're starting arguments over nothing. It's not on policy. I mean, what are we supposed to do at this point? It truly is unbelievable. Some good news out of the Supreme Court last week. The Supreme Court upholding Arizona's law requiring a proof of citizen on a 5-4 vote. Judge Amy Coney Barrett siding with the Democrats once again. I don't understand what's going on there. Is this enough to stop the cheating and to prevent some cheating down in Arizona, which we know it's ripe for?
It's too early for me to say. I've got to catch up. I did see where the court agreed to hear the question raised by the Arizona authorities. But at this point, 20 plus some states want the Supreme Court to rule on this question about whether you have to be essentially an American citizen, a U.S. citizen, and legally eligible to vote. I don't know why the Democrats find that outrageous. They say we're against voting rights. Well, no, people who are eligible, not legally eligible to vote, should not be allowed to vote. Right. And why they're so afraid of having a photo ID? You need one to get on an airplane. You need one to buy a carton of cigarettes. You need one to buy certain pharmaceuticals. Why would you not want people to have a voter ID? No, there's nothing racist about this. Right. Only people who are legally eligible to vote should be allowed to vote. And having a photo ID is not racist in any way. What are you saying, that people of color are too stupid to go get a voter ID, right, a picture ID? That's absurd. That's ridiculous. Right. It's racist, is what it is.
Yep, it's a double standard, and like I said, the Republicans are just so lazy, and I think scared of what the retribution will be if they call out these people for what they are. I think they're getting better. I want to wrap up with here the assassination attempt on President Trump. A few Secret Service members out of the Pittsburgh field office quietly put on a paid leave after the attempted assassination. Seems the FBI is more intent on figuring out who tried to maybe put maggots in the food at the DNC than they are to what's going on with this lone shooter. What do you think's going on with this? Did he act alone? Congressman Waltz saying that he had multiple overseas communications accounts. We now see video of him walking around hours before the rally with a man who is dressed in a button-down shirt, looking like someone who'd be undercover out of the government. What do you make of the whole situation, Roger?
Well, it just seems to be more questions than answers. We've now seen a photo image of him talking on the phone, the man they say is the assassin, right. Talking on the phone. Well, then that's an obvious question. Who is he speaking to? Right. That would seem to me indicate that he had some kind of confederate. We know that the Secret Service, the Department of Homeland Security, the local police, and the state police were all using different radio networks. So they were all using different channels. They weren't speaking to each other. You ask yourself, how could that happen? According to Congressman, from Louisiana, who I like a lot, came out and pointed out that they had actually moved to cremate the body of the alleged killer. I find this very, very strange.
Yeah. Like you said, more questions than answers. And that seems to be what we get out of this government, especially when it comes time to figuring out, a crime against a Republican. Roger Stone, you're a great American. You're the host of the Stone Zone. Where can people watch it? How can they watch it? When?
Sure. Go to rumble.com/Roger Stone, rumble.com/Roger Stone, or go to stonezone.com. You can get the information for both the Stone Zone Daily Show, which is on Rumble. You can also, of course, get my 77 WABC radio show in New York. So check it out, stonezone.com. Cost you absolutely nothing to subscribe. We'd love to have you follow us there.
There's nobody more influential than this, Roger. You're a brilliant American. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, John. Great to be with you.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us on our first show back. Be sure to join us back here tomorrow for the Great America Show as our quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. And please be sure to follow me on Twitter at John Fawcett NY. That's JOHNFAWCETTNY. And on Truth Social at John Fawcett. Shoot me a tweet. Let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. And you can also email me at info@ludobs.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow. May God bless you. May God bless America. And may God bless the great Lou Dobbs.